안녕하세요. 키라쌤입니다. In this video, I'm going to be going over why exactly the dictionary form is so important, and I'm going to give you different examples of how it's used. So in this video, I'm going to assume that you know some Korean adjectives and verbs already, and chances are you've probably learned them in yo form, such as 먹어요, 봐요, 해요. Now, the reason for this is because that's the most commonly used form in Korean. However, there is a different form in Korean that I'd say could possibly be even more important when learning Korean, and that is the dictionary form. First off, you're gonna need to know that all Korean sentences end in either a verb or an adjective, and all these Korean verbs and adjectives are made up of two parts, the verb stem and 다. Some examples are 먹다, 보다, 작다, 쓰다. Anytime you want to change the usage of any of these verbs, you're going to need to look at the verb stem. So this might not make much sense right now, but once you can get this down, it makes learning Korean grammar so much easier. And this video isn't going to go over specific rules for each grammar point, but rather I'll go over different types of grammar points that use this, and I'll give you examples, and hopefully you can see the patterns with it. Alright, so let's begin. The first grammar point is ayo or oyo. This is for general use, future tense, or present tense. Now, some examples of this would be I eat meat, 저는 고기를 먹어요. Or tomorrow I will go shopping, 내일 쇼핑해요. So ayo, oyo is pretty interesting because of how versatile it can be. However, keep in mind that later on, as you're learning new grammar points, you'll probably come across other grammar points that do similar things. Next grammar point is 왔어요, 없어요, which is used for past tense. Some examples are did you eat? 밥 먹었어요? I saw that movie. 그 영화를 봤어요. Or I went there yesterday. 어제 거기에 갔어요. Next grammar point we have is 고 있어요. 고 있어요 is for an ongoing action. Most times in English, this will be ing following a verb. Some examples would be I am reading a book. 책을 읽고 있어요. I am listening. 듣고 있어요. Or I am eating dinner. 저는 저녁을 먹고 있어요. Alright, and following our time, we have 을 거예요, which is for future tense or probability. Now, be careful with this one because it doesn't translate as nicely into English as the other grammar points, so a little word of caution. Now, I won't get into too much details just for the sake of time, but just remember that when in doubt, you can always go back to the ayo or oyo when referring to a future time. Anyway, so here's some examples of 을 거예요. I will meet a friend. 친구를 만날 거예요. I will study. 공부할 거예요. Or my older brother will win. 우리 형이 이길 거예요. Alright, so changing gears a little bit, we have go 싶어요, which is to express that you want to do the verb. Some examples of this would be I want to swim. 수영하고 싶어요. Or I want to see that movie. 그 영화가 보고 싶어요. So what about adjectives? Some of these grammar points work just fine with adjectives, while others do sound awkward. So here's a list of them. You can use adjectives with ayo and oyo. The baby is cute. 아기가 귀여워요. The kimchi is delicious. 김치가 맛있어요. Or the weather is hot. 날씨가 더워요. You can use 왔어요 and 없어요 with adjectives. Some examples are the girl was pretty. 여자가 예뻤어요. The movie was scary. 영화가 무서웠어요. Or I had a lot of friends. 친구가 많았어요. You cannot use 고 있어요 with adjectives. I am smarting doesn't really work. Remember, if you want to say that you are smart in the present tense, then you can just use I or oyo. 제가 똑똑해요. You can use 을 거예요 with adjectives, but it doesn't make it future tense. Rather, it just gives it probability. So what I mean by that is if I said a sentence like 다현 씨가 착할 거예요, I'm not saying that Daeyeon will be kind in the future, but rather that I'm not too sure, but Daeyeon is probably kind. If I wanted to say Daeyeon will become kind, then I'd actually use a different grammar that I didn't go over in this video. Lastly, go 싶어요. Go 싶어요 cannot be used with adjectives. I can't say I want to smart, but rather I'd want to say I want to become smart, which again would be a different grammar term. So I hope by watching this video you are able to pick up on some patterns and kind of see the difference between the grammars and just how important the dictionary form is. I've created a Blooket on these different verbs that you can practice with the different endings, so I would recommend giving that a try. Again, remember that these videos aren't meant to teach you everything about Korean grammar, but rather it's to kind of explain how things work and why they work the way they do. It's up to you to go and study on your own so that you can memorize these grammar terms and the usages for them. 들어주셔서 감사합니다.